Thank you, everyone, for coming out. So this is our second quarter briefing. Much of the stats we're going to be providing to you today are for the full year. So it's going to be 6 months versus 6 months the same time last year. But some of the things we'll be giving updates specifically on some of the operations we've got, which will be more current with our current date. So just an introduction to our senior command staff. These are our deputy chiefs. So Deputy Chief Sidney Collier, Deputy Chief Victoria Pearson, Deputy Chief Albert Stokes, and Acting Deputy Chief Sybil Amin Jones. And I'd like to just announce that, and I'm sure many of you are aware that Deputy Chief Pearson will be leaving us at the end of the month to take the bench in General District Court. So she's going to be a judge. We're very proud of her and wish her well in her future endeavors. Here are our majors. So Major Ronnie Armstead, Major Jody Blackwell, Acting Major Don Davenport, and Major Daryl Goins. Just to start off, I want to give an update on our officer-involved shootings. So we've discussed some of these, but there's been some developments. So the first one of the year, many of you remember, at 3300 block of McGuire Drive, we had an officer discharge his firearm, shoot a subject during the course and execution of a search warrant. That subject, we reported last week, unfortunately passed away from injuries that he sustained that day. So following our current protocol, we will be releasing body camera footage on that this time next week. So next Thursday, we'll have a similar community briefing as we had previously on our last fatal officer-involved shooting. So that one now is going to be considered fatal. We have already received a recommendation from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office or an announcement that they declined to prosecute in that case. On the 31st of March, we had another fatal officer-involved shooting that I've already reported on. That one as well, as I mentioned, was fatal of a homicide suspect. We have received a declination of prosecution on that case as well. The three new ones since we last spoke are going to be as follows. And there's a bit of confusion. We're reporting by Virginia State Police guidelines for officer-involved shootings, and many in the media have talked about that. That is when a person's been shot and wounded or shot and killed. There's another one that we are investigating, that we're tracking, that we made mention at the time, where a shot was fired by an officer at a subject, but that person was not struck. So going into that, so on April 22nd, we had an officer-involved shooting on 3rd Avenue. That one was non-fatal. We've received a letter of declination on that case. The one I just spoke of was on April 27th, only 5 days later, in the 1900 block of Raven Street. That's where an officer discharged his service weapon at a subject, missed that subject. He dropped his firearm and was taken into custody without any further use of force. But as I mentioned, that case has to be reviewed by the Commonwealth Attorney and is still in process of receiving a declination or a ruling on that particular case. And finally, on May 2nd, in Henrico County, we had one of our officers discharge their firearm at a subject. That one, the subject survived, is non-fatal. That was investigated by the Henrico County Police because it took place over the border. And we just received word today that the Henrico County Commonwealth Attorney has declined to prosecute in that case. So those are some of the updates. And as I mentioned, next week, next Thursday, we will have our community briefing on the first officer-involved shooting of the year. So here are the broad strokes on our violent crime for the first half of the year. So aggravated assaults are significantly down, as you can see. So that's all aggravated assaults where weapons used, serious bodily injury. Our robbery individuals are down 4% as well. And then that's driving our overall violent crime down 8%. So we're pleased about that. And another thing that is really driving our numbers that was a challenge for us last year was non-fatal shootings. So as you can see, last year, for the first half of the year, we had 115 people shot in our city. This year, it's 95, so down 17%. One of the troubling numbers, though, is we had 12 juveniles shot and wounded last year. We have 14 year-to-date, or not year-to-date, for the first half of the year. So here's some of the negative things. So our violent crime for the first half of the year, for murders, we're up 13%. So for the first half, we had 31 murders. We had 35 at the end of July. And as of right now, we are at 37. And we are investigating a death investigation just from this morning in Fairfield Court. We're very early in the stages of that, but that is another fatal shooting that we are investigating at this point. It's unclear if it's going to be a murder, but we will know that probably by the end of the day. Our rapes are up from 30 to 41 for a 37% increase, and our robbery commercials are up 11%. But if you remember from my last briefing, we were up really significantly for the first quarter in robbery commercials. We had 25 of them. It was a 125% increase over the same period last year. So that is trending in the right direction, even though it's up, and it's still a significant concern. Our detectives are making progress on the cases, and we made some significant arrests. For our number of homicide juvenile victims, we had 2 for the first half of last year, and we have one 17-year-old that was shot and murdered this year. And our RBI, this is something that I think we're really proud about. Our clearance rate right now, the IBR clearance rate for our homicides is 70%, and that's well above the national average of 54%. Our detectives every day are making progress on their cases and getting to successful conclusions. So I always talk about this. This is something that's a concern of mine. We're hoping to partner with other individuals to get some legislation on the state side to ban what are current firearm conversion devices, are commonly referred to as Glock switches. We talk about that a lot. It turns a normal semi-automatic pistol with a small piece of plastic or metal into a fully automatic machine gun. It's illegal federally. We take as many of those cases federal as we can. But we're looking to make it illegal in the state system as well. We think that that's a common sense approach that can help limit some of our gunshot wound victims. It should be, I think most people should agree that it's not a good way to have self-defense or defend your home. It's actually a really dangerous device. So for the entire year last year, we seized 13. Already this year, we've had 10 of those devices. So, we're on track to have 20, and we're just seeing more of them, and it's obviously a concern to our officers and for our community. This is another thing that I haven't reported out on previously. It's not a stat per se that we track as part of our major crimes, but it's obviously trending in the wrong direction when we look at accidental shootings. So for the first half of last year, we had 8 adults who accidentally either shot themselves or someone accidentally shot them. For the entire year, only 8. Year to date, we're sitting at 15. And that includes, the famous case of the 13-year-old who was shot in March of this year in Blackwell. But 9 adults have accidentally shot themselves, and 6 juveniles have accidentally shot themselves or been shot by someone else. And those are totally preventable statistics, and they affect people and ruin lives, and it's something we have to talk about. And we have some strategies we're gonna try to employ, but I just want to take this opportunity to make sure that people are safely storing their firearms, or teaching basic gun safety, such as where you point your weapon, to keep your finger off the trigger, things that are every first-time gun buyer should know. But it seems to be, we're seeing more and more of these accidental discharges. We have videos of them, and oftentimes people will falsely report them to us initially, saying it was a drive-by shooting or something else. We just had one the past week where someone tried to do that, and unfortunately for us, it was on videotape, so we were able to see the person playing with the gun in their pocket, and it, shot themselves in the leg. And we would have had to carry that stat, but it's also just a waste of police resources, and it's totally and utterly preventable. And here's a synopsis of our property crime. On the left side of the screen, you'll see the good things. We're way down in arson. We're down significantly in our burglary total, so that's all of our burglaries, from the residential to the outbuildings and to our commercials. And theft from motor vehicle parts and accessories, and that is almost exclusively a challenge we have with catalytic converters. Last year, the previous year, we were getting crushed with that statistically, and we're seeing a great trend of reversal on that right now, and we're really pleased about that, and we'll talk about why we think that is. But the 3 things that is killing us, not only for our property crime, and it eventually affects all of our major crime, which is a combination of property and violent crime, is these 3 crimes. So shoplifting is way up. We had 526 for the first half of last year. We had 807. Theft from motor vehicles, which is always a challenge for our city, is one, and it's by far, the biggest sheer number. That's 1,085 versus 1,317 for a 21% increase. And motor vehicle theft. And we're going to talk about each one of these crimes, what we're doing about it, and the trends we're actually seeing. But motor vehicle thefts are way over, and we'll explain why we think that is. But it's driving, for the first half of the year, we're up in major crime 7%, and property crime is 9%. While we're talking about, we're doing well in our violent crime overall, but this is where we're struggling. And when we talk about shoplifting, so in 2022, we had 526 shoplifting reports. This year, for the first half of the year, it's 807. 420 of those are at ABC stores. So, that's 53% increase year on versus year. And over half of those are at ABC stores, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's a problem that we're seeing around the Commonwealth. When I talk to chiefs of police throughout the entire Commonwealth, they're seeing the same thing, whether it's Northern Virginia, the Tidewater area, Central Virginia, or the western part of the state. ABC stores, for whatever reason, are being targeted, and thieves are walking in and just walking out. Some of the strategies that we're employing is, we're putting these pictures of our thieves on our social media platforms. We've gotten some good feedback from the community trying to identify these individuals, and we're going to charge them. Every time we can catch them, we're going to charge them. We also have operations for this last quarter that we worked 8 times with the law enforcement arm of ABC, where we have officers standing by, watching cameras, doing physical surveillance. When a shoplifting takes place, they go and make those arrests. But it's going to be a whole approach. We're looking at the buildings themselves to see if there's something we can do for crime prevention through environmental design status, but it's just driving everything we've got this year, and we've just got to keep the pressure on and trying to do what we can to stem this tide. And for our theft from motor vehicles, it's up 21%. Part of that, and when we look at where these are occurring, it's in Old Town Manchester, South Side, and generally places where we're seeing a lot of growth in our city from the population. So I would just say, we have to keep educating the public to lock your cars, to make sure you don't leave anything plainly visible, and for God's sake, never leave a firearm in your car, because we talked about this at the CBS town hall, where I was asked where we're getting a lot of our guns, where criminals are getting these guns, and it's from thieves, we believe, from our theft from motor vehicles, and the numbers bear that out. So even last year, which was a terrible year for gun being seized out of cars, 285 for the first half of the year. This year it's even worse, 19%. 358 guns are on our streets now and in the hands, by definition, of criminals who stole it. And we know that that's translating into crimes. When we're executing search warrants, when we're catching people with firearms, it's very often stolen out of a car. And as I mentioned earlier, the 13-year-old who was killed in March was killed with a gun that was stolen out of an unlocked car 4 or 5 blocks from his home, and within hours it's being used to kill him. And it's, like I mentioned, it's totally preventable. And motor vehicle thefts, way up this year, 42% for the first half of the year. When we look at this trend, you can see, so out of the 449 in 22, 27 were Kias or Hyundai. This year, the 637, 290 are either a Kia or a Hyundai, and I know we've talked about it publicly. It's a nationwide trend, the TikTok challenge, where young folks are learning how to steal these cars, and we're just seeing just a proliferation of that. So this is, like I said, the national trend. You can break the steering column, use a USB cord, and use it almost as a key and start the car up and drive off and steal them. And as bad as the property crime aspect of that is, we know that stolen cars are used in other crimes, and oftentimes violent crimes. So it's just another challenge that we want to work with our community on. And to that end, through some funding, we were able to purchase some of the steering wheel locks. Those are commonly referred to as the club. You can contact any of your precincts, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Ask a person there to give you one of these clubs, and we're gonna deploy them if you have a Hyundai or Kia. That seems to be the only way we're gonna stop the thefts, and we just want to try to do our part to work on that problem, because we feel terrible for owners of that car, of those 2 cars, and it's usually there's something the community can do, or that there's maybe even a mistake that they're making that we want to try to work with them on. In this case, if you just own one of these cars, you lock your doors, you keep your keys, you don't leave it running. Those are traditionally the things we give advice on to keep your car from being stolen. That doesn't work when people can break the steering column. So modern cars, historically, when I started over 23 years ago, we would have cars stolen with the steering wheels popped. That was very common. It was easy to hotwire cars. Most cars, it's very difficult until we came down this with these 2 cars. So now that resurgence of stolen cars are coming. So if you want to get it wheel locked, you can certainly call us, and as those supplies last, we will be handing those out to try to mitigate this. And here's some of the good news. As I mentioned, the catalytic converters, we saw 50% 57% reduction in half year on half year from last year. Big numbers. And again, that's another crime that was, the victims were totally, there's very little they could do to prevent that except what some of the things that we've asked them to do. And that is, you know, the Midas partnership is still available. If you want to have your catalytic converter painted, that's something that we're seeing, that people readily available will readily realize that it's stolen if it's one of these painted ones. We've had a great response from you guys in the media pushing that message out there, and we've made some significant key arrests. And nationally, this is a trend. It's organized crime. There's a lot of money involved in this, millions and millions of dollars being stolen from the metals and catalytic converters. But I think the recent legislation in the General Assembly that went into effect July 1, and even before that, as it was being acknowledged that they were going in that direction, I think has played a part in this. So right now, our officers would stop someone and we would see them with 15 catalytic converters. There's no VIN on there. There's no way to know where it's stolen from, so it was very hard for us to make an arrest. Now, with the new legislation, you know, you can't cross lines. The scrap metal purchasers have to follow a rigorous protocol, and then if we see one detached from a car, an officer sees it, it's presumed on its face to be stolen. So it gives our officers a lot more tools when we see that, and it's obviously making an impact. We get a lot of questions about our community response team. So here's an update on that. So for the first half of the year, we've had 151 calls for service. These are officers who are partnered with RBHA clinicians for a deferred response when we get a mental health call. So it's an alternative to arrest. 90% of those calls for service led to referrals to other groups. So that's a really good program that we're excited, and hopefully we can build upon it as our staffing increases. Last year I talked about, we investigated 28 fatal crashes last year. The state police had another 6 within the city limits. So a total of 34 people in the city limits of Richmond died as a result of a crash. Either vehicle on vehicle or pedestrians were struck. And that's just something that we looked at and we wanted to try to change. So we instituted a plan last year, and we've continued it because of the great success. So our traffic summonses are up 24%, and collisions are down, all collisions are down 27%. So we want to keep enforcing that. We don't believe that the tickets are the sole solution to it. There's certainly some traffic engineering things that the city is doing to try to slow people down, but that's the message we would have when we analyze these fatal crashes. And we've had so we had 12 so far this year. When we analyze those, it's always speed is the factor. You know, I think in years past we always had a lot of DUIs. I think the message is you know, we're still seeing some of that, but the majority are just speed and inattention. So we need our drivers to slow down when you're driving in the city, and just understand that it's, you know, I don't think to those families that have lost loved ones to these crashes, it's very similar to losing someone to gun violence. It just doesn't get the attention, but that person is still missing and still gone from the dinner table, and still families and sons and daughters and mothers and fathers are dead from the same sudden actions that gun violence occurs. It just doesn't get the attention, but it's obviously something that we're very concerned about and taking steps to address. Operation Safe Summer. So on June 10th, we started the process. That's a partnership with the Virginia State Police and 4 of our federal partners, U.S. Marshals, FBI, DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Here are the most recent stats from the 17th. So 68 felony arrests, 50 misdemeanor arrests, 76 warrants served, and 71 firearms taken off our street by this unit. And also part of Operation Safe Summer, it's not just the enforcement angle of it. The city has opened up 2 late-night gyms on Friday and Saturday at George Wythe and the Gill Center. That's designed for folks between age 15 and 20 to come in and have a safe place to play basketball, to just talk and have a place where they can just be kids and avoid some of the challenges that we've seen already this year. So that's part of that strategy, as well as some of the community-based events that like what we participated in last night with our community walk. All right. And again, with Operation Safe Summer, we've been deploying, we've purchased some safes for safe storage of weapons. We've given out 12 so far, but we've kind of given them to each of the precincts, and when a precinct commander sees a report of something, they always, where they think a person could benefit from storing their firearm safely, so there's no crime directly involved, or even if there is, it's an opportunity to give that to our community members so they can lock up their guns. And right now we want to open this up to Dr. Gwen Andrews, who's one of our Richmond community mediators. We did a great story with her and Dr. Gilmer talking about that program. So you can call Dr. Gwen at this number and that email address, and she will evaluate it and get you a safe if you need one. So you don't have to call a police officer. You can have one of the mediators come out and give an evaluation. We can give you one of our safes. If it saves the life of one child, it's all worth it for us. And an example of this that I think we realized the potential of this program was, Deputy Chief Elamine was reading the daily reports and saw that we had a juvenile subject have a friend over to a house. They go into mom's bedroom and steal an unsecured firearm. Our detectives spent the day trying to track down that individual, find the gun. We did, we made an arrest. But afterwards, we went and met with her, provided her with one of these safes so that this doesn't happen again. She was a lawful gun owner. She just didn't have the means to properly secure it. So if we can take that off the table, that's something that we want to do as an organization. And just encourage people at the point of sale. If you buy a gun, you should first have basic, we talked about the safe practice of where you point a gun, how you discharge it, how you train with it, but a big part of it too is how you're going to store that firearm. You should be saving money and thinking how you're going to protect your children and the community from your gun not ending up in the hands of someone who shouldn't have it. I mentioned this last time. We were starting the ICAP program. We have over 200 of our officers have already been through this. This is scenario-based training for officers who are encountering a subject with a weapon that is not a firearm. So edge weapons, in this scenario picture we're showing, it's a subject with a bat. And it's based upon a model from the UK police where they don't obviously have firearms, but so they have to think outside the box, utilizing communications and tactics on how they can avoid using deadly force. So whether that's with contact and cover, tasers, not rushing into a place if it's not really required. So really getting the officer scenario-based training so they can mitigate the risk of having to use deadly force if at all possible. So this is a practice that's nationwide in our country right now with progressive police departments, and we wanted to be a part of that. So every officer will be going through that by the end of the year through our officer survival training and use of force training. Another thing we're excited about is a training simulator that we purchased. This is a virtual reality simulator. It's called Apex Officer. We bought 4 of these devices. It's essentially a backpack with a computer on it and goggles. It enables us to run officers through training scenarios in virtual reality, just get many and many reps to be able to look at just different scenarios, and it's limitless. So you can have everything from an active shooter scenario to a de-escalation training and everything in between. And it's not going to replace our scenario training. It's not going to replace basic firearms training or anything else. It's going to add to what we're already doing and do it in a way where it doesn't require a lot of our trainers to spend a lot of time and manpower to run our officers through this scenario training. So we want more reps, more scenarios. It's interactive and it's comprehensive from start to finish. So we're really excited about it. And we'll be running our training staff through it at the end of this month and start pushing officers through it. When we get it online, we'll certainly invite the media to come and put on the goggles. I know I want to go through it and really see how we can efficiently get more mental reps for scenario-based training for our officers. Personnel, one of the things we're really happy about is we've had a 74% increase in our applicants compared to this for the first half of the year since last year. We've hired 10 former RPD officers back this year. We have 15 part-time sworn in background, so that's something we're excited about. Hopefully within a few weeks we'll get those officers back. Our current academy class is set to graduate August 10th, and then shortly after that we're going to start another one. So we're really excited about building back our numbers. We can have the best tactics and best training and best plans for our crime prevention and everything else, but we still need that manpower, and we're still building our agency back. So that's something we're excited about, but we want to just keep pushing forward on that. And just a heads up, August 1st, National Night Out. All the neighborhoods are invited to get outdoors and come do it in a safe environment. We'll be hitting those. We have a couple buses we'll be riding around the city in and going to as many of those venues as possible. It's just a great, and then if there's any groups that would like to register with us, you can do so at rva.gov/police. All right, we're doing the second phase of our gun buyback. That's going to be Saturday, August 12th from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Liberation Church, 5501 Midlothian Turnpike. Couple things that are going to be a bit different from last year. We're going to limit it to City of Richmond residents. We want functioning guns only. You have to be 18 or over. That was always there. And it's up to $250 for gift cards. So we want, we understand that this program is not a panacea. It doesn't fix everything. It's simply one piece of our crime and gun violence prevention tactics. So it was very well attended last year. We're hoping for similar results this year. And public safety through community engagement, we just want to, since we're here, next week, July 27th, we'll be having our monthly pop-up at the Boys and Girls Club, 1830 Creighton. Everyone's invited, and it'll be from 5 p.m. to about 7 p.m. We've had great results on that so far this year, and last year it was very popular as well. And again, our community walks, these were the ones we had this previous quarter, so April 19th, May 17th, and June 28th was in Union Hill. We just had Brookside Apartment last night where I almost dropped a puppy apparently. That would have been really bad. It was on the cover of the news and Richmond Times-Dispatch, and it was right as the dog was getting ready to jump out of my hands, and thankfully I caught it. That would have not been good for my first day. But August 23rd and September 20th, we'll get through those addresses, but those are the dates we're going to do that. All right, that's what I have. Happy to answer some questions.
Yeah, Chief, with some of the safety incidents and shootings involving schools this year, what are you doing to collaborate to kind of identify situations that could potentially turn violent?
Well, what we always ask, we have a good working relationship with RPS. Our school resource officers, in my opinion, are our first line of defense, as well as RPS school security. So they will often hear things that the patrol officers or the precinct officers might not know about. So what we're asking them to do is share that information. Many of those beefs and disputes start on social media, and they can have deadly consequences. So when that happens, we relay those threats to our special Strategic Violence Interdiction Unit, SVIU. So they follow up on all those leads. I get some of those texts sometimes. People from the community will send me a text with someone showing guns, make threats either on the school or threats to other individuals, and we always try to follow up on those, and we've had a lot of success with some of those cases.
And I know we were introduced to Dr. Gwen recently with the community mediators, but we haven't learned who the community mediators are and what they've been able to accomplish. Do you have more details on that?
Looking at different models, we have some concerns about the actual mediators. Dr. Gwen's obviously their supervisor and is very forward-facing, but we believe for them to do their work, we're not going to highlight them individually. We've hired obviously Dr. Gwen and then 2 other mediators that are on staff right now. We'd like to hire 1 more. But what I've asked them to do, and it's we've seen them on major incidents, go to hospitals, any homicide, go to the hospital, talk with the victims, sometimes go to the scene. We envision them going to the schools as the school years come, if they're starting to see those trends and some of those threats. And another big thing, and I met with Dr. Gwen last week about this, we have this list of, and many times, juveniles who've accidentally shot themselves. That's a huge red flag. If your child's in your bedroom and all of a sudden you hear a pop and there's a gunshot wound down their leg, that's a kid that's going down the wrong road and could benefit from maybe not the police necessarily intervening, but those mediators really have a role. So every one of those accidental shootings, we want to follow up on those, and then start having some metrics. So there's certainly contacts with people so we can judge what success looks like. Right now, I'm really interested in getting them some training. As you know, Richmond is part of the National Public Safety Partnership, where we have free training from the federal government, and one of those, we're going to send those mediators to some of the cities who have really figured out how to do this the right way. There's been some concerns, obviously. Some of the strategies that some cities have employed have led to violence against those violence interrupters, and that's obviously a concern of ours too. So we want to take the good things, find the models that have worked in other cities, and copy that and make it one for Richmond. So
you mentioned some of the increased use of technology in policing. Are there any other tools that are on the horizon in the near future?
Well, Real-Time Crime Center, I want to have that stood up by the end of the year. So right now we're in, and it's frustrating for me, but I understand why. Like I just want to buy these things. When we decide what we want to buy, I want to get it up and running. But we have a procurement process with the city for a very good reason, and some of those, some of that is in that process. But hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a video aggregator so that we don't have. Right now there are endless numbers of video companies, video surveillance camera companies. We want them to have on one flat screen in a room like this. It would be a wall of screens where officers and crime analysts can monitor an event in real time. So when we look at a homicide, instead of the detective going back to the office pulling up the video, I want civilians and sworn staff in this building giving them real-time data to say, hey, the car that just left that did the shooting is red and it has a sticker on the back. Or the person just ran off, put a gun in this trash can right in front of the blue Honda. That kind of information, I think, is gonna leverage what we do. Now there's all kinds of technology, and we vet it, what's right for Richmond. I think there's a lot of people that are pushing me for facial recognition software. I'm not as interested in that. But something I am interested in the second phase is gunshot detection. We see how that can work and how it can give officers real-time information, so commonly referred to as ShotSpotter, but there's other vendors. I really want to, it's expensive, but so maybe that's for next year's budget if we can find it, but that's what I think a real-time crime center is something that Richmond could really benefit from. We get so many complaints from our citizens about random gunfire, but it's hard for officers to know where they come from. If we can have that, there'll be some synergy between the casings we recover from these non-fatal incidents and put through our NIBIN machines. So that's the goal, that all of these systems talk to each other, and that we can provide a work product for our detectives that make them more effective and efficient with what we're asking them to do. And we always get the casings from the shooting. So we have people scouring the area. We don't leave the scene until we feel like we've gotten all that evidence. But for these cases where a person's not shot, the officer looks, but if he doesn't find him, he or she moves on. This will tell us an exact coordinates of how many shots were fired and where they are exactly, and we can collect all of them, put them through our machine, and link them to all the other shootings that gun may have been involved in. And when those systems talk to each other, that's how you really solve crime. So that's the goal. But it's not happening as fast as I'd like.
Hi. So, as you may know, I've been looking into the case involving Charles Byers, who was arrested by RPD at Chippenham Hospital, then later shot and killed by Chesterfield police. And so my question for you is it appropriate for Richmond police to arrest a man at a hospital who is actively in mental health crisis under a temporary detention order for an assault that involved no injuries and no weapons, and thus removing him from the psychiatric facility where he was ordered to be at for treatment?
Well, I've asked for a review of the officer's actions that day. I can tell you that has happened in the past. We've always been taught that criminal trumps a civil. So if we have a hospital staff member who alleges an assault and wants to discharge that person from the hospital, then we would make an arrest like we would in any other scenario. But I take your point, and what I think we're gonna, once we get this review back, we'll have some of those questions that I know you've been asking. It's a very tragic situation, and what I want to do before I really speak about the merits of this particular case is to get you the details so that we don't have to come back and clean it up later. But that is something I tasked our Internal Affairs Division to do a review on.
And is that the case with this incident? Is that the hospital did want him discharged and wanted the police to respond?
Well, that's one scenario. What I will confirm, once we narrow that down, I'll confirm that for you.
Do you know when that review might be complete?
In days. So either, I would say early part of next week, we'll have some answers for you on that. I know it's you know, I think Chief Katz spoke about it and talked about the challenges that all of us are facing with dealing with folks in mental health crisis. We talked about it today. It's a prolific challenge, and it's I don't know all the answers on it, but what we want to do is from every incident we have to try to learn from it and improve our policies and procedures. But we'll have those answers for you within a week and get that back to you.
And I know that there's still questions about Huguenot High School's graduation mass shooting. I know there were little details that you can provide. Are there any updates at this time?
Well, first, and I probably should have led with this, I'd like to apologize to members of the media that, you know, on that Monday, I told you that we would be giving you an update. And on Friday, I think, or maybe Thursday night, we told you we weren't going to be able to do that. So I know you planned your shows around it. I can just tell you that it was my intention on Monday to do that. With information our detectives learned on some of those, some of the details, I became concerned about releasing it. I had a conversation with Commonwealth's Attorney Colette McEachin. After my conversation with her, she felt it could possibly jeopardize the case. So I know so what we did is I reviewed with her what I was able to release as far as some of the questions we had gotten. So what I was able to release at that time in the pre-planned video that I pushed out is what I can say about it at this time. So I know there's a lot of questions. What I will say about that case is that what we owe our community and what we owe the families of those who are involved is the truth about what happened. And that truth's going to come out in John Marshall Court Building.
As far as the traffic deaths that you were talking about earlier, you were talking about speed being a factor. Are there any plans at this point, whether it's, you know, speed enforcement or cameras or infrastructure for addressing, you know, this role that speed's playing?
Yes. So we still have that plan in place where we have our Special Operations Division in partnership with our 4 precincts of enforcing traffic-related speeding events in our high injury network. The top 5 of those in each of the 4 precincts, as well as the top 5 complaints from our citizens that we've received directly and often from city council members. When they tell us this is a speed complaint, that's where we're focusing on it. So like I said, our summonses are way up, and I can just tell you that, you know, in 2021, when I ran the numbers, we were significantly down on our traffic stops, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Part of it was our staffing difference from the previous years, but part of it also was, you know, officers weren't comfortable making those traffic stops and doing that proactive policing that sometimes we need them to do. I don't think that writing a bunch of tickets is the only solution, but it has to be part of that process. Some of the other things that we're working on is red light camera enforcement, speed camera enforcement. There will be, we're in the process of going through both of those programs. We think that can help be a part of the puzzle, but I think it all works if our drivers in our city just understand that you're in an urban environment and to please slow down.
And I know Operation Safe Summer is set to end in September, but obviously crime happens year-round.
Yep.
Is there another initiative that you all are working on to specifically target the youth after that date?
Well, I wouldn't use the term target the youth. We don't use that. But we're always looking for ways to partner with other agencies. So once just like our traffic plan, we had a set deadline for that. When it ended, we realized we need to keep it going. It's being really successful, so we'll evaluate that as the end. I just know that, like the Richmond Police Department, Virginia State Police is suffering from staffing shortages. We really thank them for partnering with us in this because they have other challenges, but they agreed to come in and help us with our violent crime issue, like the state police has always done for us. So we'll evaluate that at the end, but I think it's being really successful right now. It's hard for us to determine what we've actually stopped, but we know if we're seeing some of these videos where people are threatening each other online and our detectives go out there with their trooper partners and stop that person and find that specific gun and make that arrest, that who knows what we stopped. So I think every time we're able to do that, we can count that as a win.
I know you said you were down overall in violent crime, but you said you're still struggling in property crime, major
Yes.
crime. What are some things now you want to prioritize to kind of turn that around as well?
Well, again, it's the three. It's the three big, it's not all property crime. It's shoplifting, and that's a real challenge for us because we can't have officers sitting at every ABC store or every retail store deterring shoplifters. We have to be strategic with it. We have to leverage the technology by putting their faces on our social media platforms, by partnering with ABC. When it comes to theft from motor vehicles, again, we would just reiterate, we're asking folks to just lock their doors. While some windows are smashed, the majority are still people just walk, and we see this in the videos. We just see groups of individuals walking through neighborhoods pulling on door handles. And when I first saw the amount of guns that we were having reported stolen out of cars, I was convinced, those guys back there will tell you, that I had this theory that it was all straw purchasers and the people are lying about it. Because it's, I can't fathom being a gun owner and leaving it on the seat of the car in plain view in an unlocked car. That sounds insane to me. Until we started getting the videos. And our detectives are coming back and say, yes, some of that are straw purchasers and they're just lying on their reports. But a majority are just people that maybe they're first-time gun buyers and they don't understand the responsibility of the fact that you've got to secure your weapons. But that's how these guns are ending up in the hands of people that shouldn't have them. So the theft from motor vehicles, the shoplifting, and then the motor vehicle thefts, I think is an odd trend. And what we're trying to do with these two manufacturers, Kia and Hyundai's, and what we're trying to do with our deployment of the steering wheel locks are similar to what we did to have a part of that success with the catalytic converter thefts, is to try to find a way to nudge those numbers and make it harder for thieves to steal those cars.
And I know you said that a lot of that was happening, like Manchester, Southside, those growing areas. Obviously, we can't really stop growth. It's something that's happening all around. What's something you could do then? I mean, what's kind of the...
Well, look, yeah, growth is something we want our city to continue to grow. We want people to move in. We want people to enjoy our city. But I think it's a matter of, if you have, 3,000 or 30,000 more residents, obviously there's going to be more property crime because there's more potential victims. So it's about educating people that might not be that live in an urban environment to take those common sense tips of not leaving property in your car and just securing them to try to educate them. We're gonna make arrests where we can, but I'm under no illusions that we can arrest away the shoplifting problem or arrest away the problem of theft from motor vehicles, because it's a class 1 misdemeanor. No one goes to prison for any amount of time for stealing an item out of a car or taking a bottle of liquor out of an ABC store. So we've got to find other ways to make it harder for those thieves to be successful.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.